Okay, fuck.
Awesome. Well, happy good evening. It is Alma T, and I'm so over the top excited to be here with you today. Welcome to Touche Life. I'm your host. Where here we gain our strength through truth, testimony, and ultimately transformation. Today's episode is guaranteed to pull at your heartstrings. It is extremely passionate, important, and definitely something in the cards for these times. Some would even call it modern day slavery. Today, we are dealing with human trafficking and bringing awareness to Human Trafficking Awareness Month. I am blessed to have two amazing guests with me here today. The amazing Sergeant, Mr. V, Mark V from Palm Beach County, Florida. And then I have a sweet soul who loves to work with girls and is also a part of the educational system in our law enforcement branch here in Atlanta, Georgia. Between these two, they're not only going to inform us, but they're going to empower us as to how we can take a stand against human trafficking. Welcome to you both.
Thank you
Oh,
very
I'm going to
much.
bring her right back on.
Bringing me on.
Now, thank you so much for being here with us. I'm going to bring Stacy back in. There she is. Welcome. Welcome again to you both. I'm happy to have you both to bring your expertise. So, if you will, quickly, just tell us a little bit about you and your experience. I'll start with ladies first. Ms. Tolbert, if you can tell me about who you are, what you represent, and your experience with human trafficking.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for allowing us to be here tonight and for opening your platform with this discussion. It's a discussion, honestly, that needs to be had, and it is a serious topic that most people don't want to talk about. So, my background is I am in emergency management. I also have a background in teaching and teaching on the adult side in post-secondary education where I was a medical program director. But prior to that, I've also worked in the legal field as a paralegal in the Office of Workers' Compensation well as medical malpractice, and also as an EMT, both on the road and in the ER. So I've seen a little bit of everything in a different perspective. In my background in working with young ladies, I have a youth organization that I started back in 2004. At the time, it was called Stepping Forward. And working with these young ladies, it was about mentoring them and pouring into them so that they would understand their character, have self-motivation, self-esteem, things of that nature. And today I've evolved into working with still young women, but also preteens as well as young adult women and even mature women in life coaching, or what we call empowerment coaching for women, getting them to also understand and reflect on their self journey and understanding who they are and what their purpose is. So again, thank you.
Awesome. No, that's amazing. Please make sure you send those links to me. That way I can put them on my personal website as well as in this episode so people know how to reach you. Thank you.
Awesome. Will do. Thank you.
Sergeant Mark Vertive.
I don't know how I'm going to follow that, but I've been in law enforcement approximately.
Right.
It's going to be tough. I'm going to try. I've been in law enforcement for about 18 years.
Okay, go ahead.
Wonderful.
I do work in Palm Beach
Wow.
County. I work for the West Palm Beach Police Department, actually.
Yes.
And I spent most of my career in the special unit. So,
Nice.
whoop, whoop. So I have had the fortunate experience to deal with some highly sensitive cases and bring justice to some true, I consider true victims. And during those years, I've had the opportunity to serve on the Palm Beach County Human Trafficking Task Force. I've had the experience of working with some pretty great detectives, pretty great supervisors, community partners, working as a team, bringing justice to a very, very sensitive population. And I look forward to it. I'm still in the unit. I am a supervisor of the unit now. And outside, I'd rather do than this.
Awesome. That is amazing. And I can speak from
Wonderful.
experience, honestly, with working with both of you all. Uh, at the time, he was Detective Vertife, and his diligence. You know, you just have some people that stand out. You just have some
Yes.
people that are humble, sincere, and they it's not just a job, it's a call. And I can
Yeah.
honestly say the integrity, the compassion for people, he had it. He has it. And that's why I knew from the moment that we were going to redo this episode again, he had to be one that gave his presence and his expertise, as well as you, Stacy. Your heart every day since you've come into the office have has been for the people. And so
Thank
anyone
you.
like that with integrity, I love to be in your presence. People
Hmm.
like you make everyone else better. And I'm grateful for that you're here. All that being said, we're talking about human trafficking, which doesn't even
Hmm.
seem like it's supposed to go together. And I was
Right.
sharing with Sarge when this first came to me where I could understand it. When it
Hmm.
first came to me, I had a vision of only young girls at the bus stop. I was coming from Riviera Beach Police Department. My only vision were young girls at the bus stop, unknown vehicle pulling up, snatching, grabbing, and going. It wasn't until we started our nonprofit organization, Wings, Women Inspiring the Next Generation of Sisterhood. And I found out there was an awareness month. I decided to get some people together, and I was somewhat perturbed because I had more boys there than girls, which is not what I wanted because I thought boys had nothing to do with this. No offense, Sarge. And I had this idea that they didn't need to be teenage boys. And this particular law enforcement officer from Florida came in, and I told him I wanted it to be conversational like we're having. He dropped bombs. He had
Hmm.
just lost a girl in human trafficking, unfortunately. He schooled us on what they had kick at the time with social media, um, and so much more that I'm sure you all will go into. But I was left breathless. I was honestly left breathless because I had this misconception of what it really is. And I couldn't help but wonder how many more people just have this misconception. It's just this. And because of that, because of our ignorance, unintentionally, we bypass uh, so many signs, so many warnings, so many
Yeah.
situations that we could have been involved with. Now, everybody isn't for everything, but for those who are, how much are we missing? So, just to kick that off, can you, and I'll start with you, Sarge, can you tell in general, if this was just a one on one, no one had ever heard of human trafficking before, what is it and what does it entail?
Well, the common definition of human trafficking, to be correct, is obtaining some sort of commercial sex act or labor um, through the use of force, fraud, or coercion. So what
Hmm.
that means is someone
Mm,
is forcing or through fraud or coercion another person to commit a
Hmm.
commercial sex act,
mhm,
which is having sex for some sort of benefit, money, typically,
Hmm.
or labor, maybe out in massage parlors or
mhm.
agricultural fields. Um,
Hmm.
and in doing so,
Wow.
they're obtaining something, again, money for this other person doing this act. With juveniles, it's not necessarily the
Mhm.
same. If a juvenile's involved in or induced into a commercial sex act, it's automatically human trafficking, and we don't need to prove force, fraud, or coercion.
Right.
Hmm.
Wow.
Hmm.
Okay. That was awesome. How common is it?
It's more common than most people believe or know.
Hmm.
One of the problems is that it's such a hidden crime because everything or most of the things happen behind closed doors, or
Mhm,
the victims are in fear of reporting
mhm,
it, in fear of their traffickers, or
Right.
or they may have in fear of deportation or in fear of
Mm-hmm.
just law enforcement in general. So they don't report it. So we never find out unless a citizen, a tipster, tips us off, and we're able to start looking into the tip and investigating the incident.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, we may never even know about it.
Right.
And so if we don't know about it, I would guess the general public, if they're not familiar with what it is, would never know about it, or would never know what to look for.
Right.
Right. Stacey,
Mm-hmm.
in your experience, based on what Sarge mentioned, uh, how common has it been for you, especially now that you're in the school system? How common has it been for you to hear of it or notice it in the street or in any of the environments and communities that you're a part of?
Well, and I just want to piggyback on something that Sarge said when it comes to human trafficking. I think a lot of times when we hear the words human trafficking, we immediately jump to the sexual exploitation portion of it. But we also have to
Mm-hmm.
consider that there's a portion of this that is also associated with forced labor, um, that
Yes.
child forced labor, as well as the sex trafficking portion that's involved. And so it is
Mm-hmm.
true that oftentimes we overlook because we don't know what to look for. Who would think really to look for
Mm-hmm.
forced labor when it comes to human trafficking? That forced labor and
Right.
that child forced labor, making these kids or individual themselves work in a private residence, and that individual is controlling everything. Most people would just think, oh, that's the child care person, not realizing that that is part of human trafficking as well. As far as
Mm-hmm.
it goes, inside the community in general, or flowing over into a school system, again, I think there is not enough awareness provided as far as an educational standpoint and what to look for, and how to recognize certain things taking place. I think because we're in a society right now where everything is where the focus is on violence that occurs in schools, that these are some of the things that kind of take a back burner, even though it's happening. It's not discussed
Mm-hmm.
as much because it's not what is up front at the moment. But it's an ongoing thing. My
Okay.
experience in general has been working with young girls and seeing in them before it even gets to the point of sex trafficking or human trafficking, them not even knowing who
Mm-hmm.
they are,
Mm-hmm.
and just looking at what's happening in their lives
Mm-hmm.
from a home standpoint, from a community standpoint. So, hitting it at that level is going to be just as important, with that awareness.
Okay. So let's roll with that. Let's start with children, and then we'll move into adults because we know that it's both.
Hmm.
Are there communities, or let's put it like this: what are some characteristics that these persons who abuse these children look for? I remember when I was
That's
home in Palm Beach
interesting.
County, it was
Hmm.
nothing about 6 in the morning to go down Broadway. That was our street. And there were a
Hmm.
group of Latino males, mostly males, maybe some females, and they're at the bus stop waiting for work to come, right?
Yes.
And they get on the bus to work and they go where we call out west and they go work. And it wasn't until a friend of mine down in Palm Beach County, she was going home late one night and she found this Latina mom and daughter on the side of the road, shivering, scared. I never forget it. She had a real life
Mm.
experience, and come to find out, they didn't speak any English, but her child's father works for the sheriff office, so they were able to, we were able to come together to help. But that was an actual labor trafficking experience. Her and the child had tried to run away from the person that brought them over here thinking they were helping them get a job. Now, how common
Mm.
is that before we go any further, especially with children? How common is that, either one of you?
I think it's very common, more common than we care to admit.
And we do see it.
Is it only domestic related, or would you say? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Finish that question, Alma.
Oh no, I was saying, as opposed, is it possible that it's also happening in some of our local businesses as well as domestic related?
Yes, we've had numerous cases in massage parlors. We've had numerous cases in I don't say nightclubs, but strip clubs.
Mm-hmm.
We've had
With children?
yes. No, not
Yes.
I would say juveniles more.
Right.
Juveniles could here be adults.
Preteen. Yeah. Young adolescents.
Right.
Yes. But it does happen more.
Wow.
It's more common than
Okay. Okay, so break this down, and especially this may be more for you, Sarge, but please feel free to jump in, Stacy, anytime. When you have come face to face with some of these perpetrators that have taken advantage of these men, women, boys, and girls, as much as you can, what is the mindset? What are they saying they're looking for, or what have you found that they're looking for when they are out looking for these girls, boys, men, and women? What is there? Because you know, like criminal, what do they call them? Serial killers. They found that they all had like this common trend. They used to like wet the bed or something. I was watching this documentary. Yeah, common traits. So what are some of the common traits that you are finding with these perpetrators when it comes to human trafficking?
Well, the main, in my experience, the main thing is vulnerability.
There it
if they
is.
find vulnerability,
it's that one word.
They'll exploit it through hopes of love or financial freedom or a job, whatever it is. It's the vulnerability that they prey on, and they're really good at what they do.
Yes.
The ones that really want to gain the trust of the children spend time grooming them, and it's a process that they go through. And once they're able to do that, then it opens the door for the trafficking.
Yes.
Wow. So they never see it coming. They're what the kids call now finessed.
Exactly. 100%. Before they know it, they believe this person loves them. This person has promised them things. And then once the trafficker feels the doors open or they've gone far enough, then they start changing. Then they start the process of, I guess, integrating the sex acts, for example, where they'll make an excuse. Maybe they're staying at a hotel and they have to pay rent and they can't afford it. So now they'll have a conversation and they'll discuss maybe that I'll use a female for this example. Maybe the female can help out by earning money, helping pay the rent. And then once they agree to that and it starts happening, then the violence starts coming in, and the traffickers tend to be more violent with their victims.
All right. And it's also about the manipulation that right. And the manipulation that comes with all of that, because once they've been finessed or groomed and they think, oh, this person loves me, and now they get them to move into a different aspect of what they're doing, and they begin to withhold things from them, the food, the shelter, whatever it may be, to now continue that process of, well, you need me type deal in order to survive or to live. And so when you're dealing with a young mind that is so impressionable, that is vulnerable, that has a lack of education because they're young, they have a lack of housing, they have or what we call an instability of housing, they want to fit in, and this person may be giving them these things, and they're looking for something to satisfy them that they've missed in life at such a young age. And typically it is going to be love,
The vulnerability.
somewhere, and that's where all of this vulnerability comes from. They're still growing, they're still trying to figure out who they are. So now I have this adult person who's trying to show me who I am in the wrong way. And I always call it looking for love in all the wrong places. And it's not just kids that do this, adults do it as well.
Right. And that leads me into my next question. So we know they're looking for the vulnerabilities in the children, but how is this playing a part with the adults? Because we are seeing the videos, it's even up here in Georgia, it's a little north of where I am, but they had it on TikTok. This woman went live of where the car pulled up the whole car pulling up so close where you can't get your door open type thing. She was in the grocery store, and it just so happened, I think Target. She told the story of she was walking around the store on a phone. A guy was following her. She wasn't paying attention, but it happened to be another woman in the store. And that woman noticed that that guy was following her. And every time she bent a corner, he bent the corner. So she kind of slipped a note to the woman to tell her, be careful, because I see they pulled a car up next to you and that guy's following you, which led her to call for police. But how are they looking for their adult victims, male and female?
You know, I'm gonna say this because it's there is something that stands out about a vulnerable person. I had a gentleman, we were just having a general conversation while I was at the dealership getting one of my vehicles fixed or repaired, and just in general conversation. And I can't even remember how we got on this topic. And he began to tell me how he used to be a womanizer. And I was like, how do you do that? He was like, I knew how to pick them out. I would watch. And he said, there could be a room full of women, and I could tell which one is vulnerable. There is something about a vulnerable person, their demeanor, their appearance, even not to say that they look disheveled, it's just something about their appearance. I think we could all walk into a room and look around and tell the person who is more shy than anyone else, who's the outspoken person in the room, just all by demeanor and how they're presenting themselves.
Insecure.
The insecurities are there. They stand out.
Well, like Sarah said, they're good at what they do.
And they are.
Yeah.
They are. I wish there could be a session and I wrote this down. I'm going to let you talk, Sarge. I get to talking.
Oh, you're good.
If you could get the individuals and talk to them who did this, that would open up a totally different perspective. We're on the outside trying to get it covered. We're on the outside trying to rescue. We're on the outside trying to save. What is in their eyesight? That's what needs to be seen. Those are where the ingredients are. What's in their eyesight? What's in their mind? Those are the individuals that really need to be brought on, and conversations need to be had with them. I don't know if anyone's ever done that, but that is an area that needs to actually start taking place. These are the individuals who can, just like they want to pry into the mind of a serial killer, pry into the mind of these traffickers. You know? I'm sorry, Sarge, go ahead.
Oh, you're good. You're good. You're doing great. To go off of what Alma's question was, the same thing. It's vulnerabilities, even with adults. We've had young adults, late teens, 18, 19, early 20s, looking for love. Same circumstances. And then with that crowd comes the introduction of narcotics. So maybe we find a lot of our victims are impaired, and they do it in order to commit the sex acts. it's easier for them to cope when they're on narcotics. So now the trafficker needs that to hold over their head. They're feeding them narcotics or not, and kind of forcing them to continue on doing what they're doing. We've had, the labor, same idea is, they're either paying off a debt or same thing under fraudulent circumstances, allowed to work, believing they're making a better future for themselves and their family. Meanwhile, the traffickers are holding all the money and forcing them or threatening them or threatening their family and forcing them to continue doing what they're doing. So again, it kind of is all like Stacey explained. Like there's this a vulnerability of some sort. Everybody has them, and the traffickers are very good at identifying.
It's modern day pimping.
Yes.
Modern day pimping. Okay. So now,
and modern day
slavery. If we're talking to those victims, modern day slavery, yes. So if we're talking to those people that they are, those boys and girls, males and females that are out there right now, what are some signs we would, one, tell the children, males and females, and we would also tell the adults? Because I learned years ago when I did this the first time, I learned about recruiting parties, which I had never heard of. I learned that's when I guess, for lack of a better term, I guess the network that they work in, a lot of the perpetrators. And I learned how a lot of them, it's still this. Now the statistics may have changed, the technique may have changed. You all can let us know. But at that time, they were saying they would go to the football games after the jocks, after the guys. And the guys, one perp did actually say he had a nice car, with the rims and all that stuff and the loud music. I don't even think they do that anymore, but he would go sit out there and these boys would come to him because they'd be checking out his rims, checking out his new Jordans, and he was always fly. And after a while, that's how he lured them. The girls, of course, you already hit that, is with the vulnerabilities. So now in the age of social media, what can these young men and young women be on the lookout for? What can they be on the lookout for in person and via social media? If any of you all want to take that, because I know social media has to play a part in it somewhere now.
I think it's continued education, communication from parents to their kids on social media. Don't, if somebody tries to befriend you, don't befriend them back unless you know them in person. So I wouldn't talk to anybody online through Snapchat or Instagram that you don't know in real life. That would be my first thing. Open communication from the parent. As far as you mentioned, like,
what does that look like? What does that look like?
Which portion? Open communication?
Open communication, because you'd be surprised at, well, break that down.
Yeah, like I said, a parent needs to be involved in their children's life. They need to either set certain features on their phones for children so they can't access certain websites. They need to know what their children are on, who their children are communicating with, and have conversations with them. Like I just mentioned a minute ago, not to befriend anybody online you wouldn't know in real life.
Right.
So off social media in real life, the same thing. Don't allow people into your life that you don't know. The parents need to be involved more.
Right.
And we see it where they're just not. They're allowing their children to have apps, social media at a very young age, 9 years old. It's not even legal. And a lot of the social media platforms don't even allow that. But children know a way around it, or they have someone in their life that account for them, and they're allowed to get online. And parents don't pay attention as they should.
Right.
And I think it's also,
and that's why I wanted you to hit on that. That's why I wanted you to hit on that. It sounded like a cliche question, But we're in this age, and it's not really how I raised my children. And of course, my children aren't perfect. They had their moments. But we're in this age where parents feel like their children are entitled to have, I had a 5-year-old with a cell phone, and it's like, are you aware of the vulnerabilities? Like, we owe them something, and we don't have the same communication or questions with them. But it's okay. We're supposed to be in their business. you know, you going to Stacy's house? Okay, who's Stacy's mom? I used to get on my kids' nerves because one time I didn't really do sleepovers, but they wanted to go to Pookie's house or Poo Poo's house or something. And I said, what's Poo Poo's name? Don't come to me with no Poo Poo and Pookie and Juju and BB. I don't do all that. What's their who's their mama? Who's their father? Where they live? And I don't feel if we're careful, we're not asking those questions like we used to. I joked with my girls real quick when they first started trying to court and date, and they only had the boy's first name. I said, look, when I dated in high school, I knew the first name, the last name. I knew their mama name. I had an idea what family they came from. But we're in a different age now where these kids almost, it seems, and some adults too, like that's too much information. And in the day of information, there can't be too much information. You know what I mean? So I wanted you to really pull that chicken and talk about that to the parents. I love that.
Well, true story, real quick, and I'll let Stacy talk. My son had a birthday party, and he was 9 years old, maybe 8 years old, and a friend came over. But the dad literally pulled up the cul-de-sac. Kid got out of the car, ran into my house. Never met the dad, never met the kid. I had no idea who these people were, and the dad just drove off. Didn't come back for 3 hours until the birthday party was over. I mean, luckily, we're in enforcement. I mean, not all.
And just left.
Yeah, just left the kid there, and
I think
drove off.
I think a lot of parents are doing that today.
Wow.
I don't know what it is that makes them so comfortable to do that. Even with my little great niece, and her little friends, when they want to do a sleepover and she wants to come to my house, I'm like, does her mom know? I need to speak with her mom. Oh yeah, auntie, she knows. No, baby, her mom doesn't know me. I'm not going to do anything, but she needs to know me. So, and I think all of this really, we have to drill into parents that this is real. It's real out here. I remember back in the day when they talked about the white van down in Florida. I'm from Florida as well. They talked about the white van.
Yes.
And as kids, if we saw a white van, we would take off running.
It's alive and well.
They were snatching kids. We took off running if we saw a white van. So, the mentality today is so different when it comes to kids. It's like they feel invincible. There's no fear, but they're very soft when it comes to, they called me a name. It's like a catch 2020 with this, but targeting parents really need to be drilled into parents because if the parents aren't completely aware, how can they tell the child what to look for? How can they make a child aware if they're not completely aware? And it's not that they don't know. I think it just clarity needs to be given. More awareness needs to be driven home with parents, as well as education on this. I think a lot of them there could be a fear of, well, I don't want to really hear about that because, I don't want to deal with that type thing. But this is unfortunately the world that we're living in today. And in the only way to have your child or children understand what's going on so that they could be aware of their surroundings is to provide that information, give them the information. And it's a community fight. It's not just a parent's fight. It's a community that needs to be aware.
Stacey, I think you make a very good point. Back in the day, it was obvious. It was the white van, right? Those things still happen, but tenfold is online. It's happening through, and that's what parents need to understand. It's happening through social media. It's happening through online advertisements, and that's where, like you said, I think the parents are in denial that, no, this doesn't happen here. It wouldn't happen to my kid, but it does. There is no demographic that human trafficking doesn't touch. It's everywhere. It's every country. Florida, we were talking about it earlier, and I, Florida for a long time has been in the top 3, top 4. Georgia is in the top 6.
Yes.
Right.
So this stuff does happen.
Yes.
And it only takes, one relationship for you to lose your child. And there needs to be more awareness. There's a lot of projects out there.
Right.
The Police Project, the Blue Campaign. There's like the truck stops. You talked about the football games and the recruiting parties. Well, they're doing better. There's better advertisements now or awareness out at truck stops and things like that. And that just needs to continue. But it also needs to continue in the household.
And I think also parents need to.
That's where it starts. Mom, begins at home.
Yeah. And parents also need to start paying attention to the games that their children are playing online. These games have so many back doors to them where people are talking to these kids and convincing these kids to meet them in certain places and things of that nature. There's so much that crosses each other that, that awareness, it just has to be there. And we really, really have to push these campaigns out here to get it out, even through.
So other than the Blue Campaign, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. No, I was saying, even through places where people don't even think to place these type of things, laundromats, place them in laundromats, churches, transit hubs or and especially when there are large events going on, there should be some type of posting communication or something that makes someone aware, even if it's just one of those little banner things that you strategically place around during these large events.
Now, if someone believes that there may be a situation at a game on the phone, I was telling Sarge about an incident I had even yesterday at the grocery store. What are some things that we can do if we think that we're being watched or stalked, or what? Because here's the thing. Last night I told him that I was at the grocery store, went in to get something. A guy let me go in front of him, very nice guy. Then I went out. I really didn't see him again. But as I was walking to my car, I noticed this strange looking guy walking towards me. Then there was another guy in a car that was parked right in front of me, not a white van, but a little white car. And as I was walking, I was on my phone. I had my phone in my hand, but I slowed down because it looked like he was walking towards me a little, I don't know, maybe too closely. I just didn't feel right. And the Spirit of the Lord, if anything. And I slowed down, kind of stayed in a lighted area. And as I walked towards my car, the other guy who was in front of me yelled something. And I talked on my phone as if the person I was talking to was in the car. He got in the car. He followed me because I live like a light away. But I wasn't going to take him home. I told my children to come out and meet me outside or to stay close by the door when I pulled up. But I wasn't home yet. I pulled in a Wingstop parking lot where it was lit up with a lot of people, and the guy kept going. But that was just, besides the Spirit of the Lord, that was just instincts from working in law enforcement all these years, which most people can't say that, and watching a lot of Blacklists that may have played a part too. But what would you tell people if they feel they're being watched, or a concern from the football games, basketball games to school, online? What would be some techniques?
Well, I think you touched on a few good ones. Make yourself be known, like you said. Walk in lit areas. Don't ever take the same route home, or if you feel like somebody's following you, people got to pay attention. You got to pay attention to your mirrors. If you're driving, look over your shoulder, get on the phone like you did. That was a great example because you did everything right. honk your horn, make your presence known and get the attention of other
Yes.
people, or go to a more crowded area.
Right.
Online, like I said, online, and it's hard to tell kids, what to do, what not to do. But they have to learn
Right.
to not speak to strangers, stranger danger.
Yes.
And it's
Stranger
not
danger.
everyone. I don't want to tell a child they have to be under,
Right.
hide under a rock their whole life, but it's a fine line we walk. Like, who can they talk to? Who can they trust? Who can't they
Right.
trust?
Right.
Now, if you see something, like if you actually observe something, obviously, the old saying, see
Yes.
something, see something. I would hope people would call 911. A lot of the
Yes.
times we get the excuse, well, I didn't call because I didn't want to bother the police. I didn't know what I was looking at. We're working 24/7, 365 days a year. We're going to respond regardless. So I would rather
Yes.
get 1,000 calls
Yes.
of nothing and maybe save one victim than not get called and
Yes.
allow these activities
Right.
to continue. So my
Treat it like it's your child.
Right.
Exactly. If you would call 911, or if you wouldn't, well, but yes, if I had one tip for adults or even kids with phones, call 911. Let us know what you see, and we'll investigate it.
Right.
I love it.
I agree with
Stacey,
Sarge.
anything? We're going to get ready and wrap up.
Yeah, I agree with Sarge wholeheartedly. One of the key aspects is making sure that our kids are aware of their surroundings. Like you said, we don't want them to live in fear, but we need them to live and be aware of their surroundings. And that's for adults as well. Be aware of your surroundings. If you feel uneasy about something, listen to it, because it's telling you, hey, maybe have a sense of heightened awareness at that point in time. But I also want to say that even with all of this and getting this out there, we definitely have to implement a lot more empowerment programs, mentorship programs for young kids, for young women, young adolescent males, and definitely getting the community involved. A lot of collaborative efforts and hotlines. This is a serious issue, because when these kids it's hard to find them, hard to get them back. When we do, thank God. But you have to also consider how many of them are ending up overseas and things of that nature. So implementing these programs can be very, very important to helping to combat a lot of this. We got to build our kids' self-confidence. We have to build their motivation and their self-esteem. We got to get them focused on what their future is going to look like. And that's going to take an entire community. It's going to take their parents. It's going to take a community. It's going to take those individuals who are invested in making sure that our kids grow up, safe.
Yeah, no, I think you made a good point. We've had not necessarily.
So we have the Blue campaign. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Mark.
Not necessarily human trafficking related, but at the police department, we've done outreach programs, and I think, like Stacey said, get the community involved. But us actually interacting with the community builds trust, especially with the immigrant population who don't trust law enforcement. It goes a long way, and I think building that trust in those relationships will help them report when they are either a victim or they witness a victim of human trafficking, and that'll raise awareness as well.
And I want to ask one question.
I love that you said that, because one thing that have is a relationship with the community. Growing up, I grew up in West Palm, and there was such a strong bond and relationship when I was growing up. It kind of fizzled as I got older with all the different, opinions, but rebuilding that relationship and that bond was amazing. I knew drug dealers in the neighborhood, and I grew up in a nice neighborhood, but when the 80s came in and they were trying to start infiltrating, but they were so respectful to the police.
Yes.
So respectful to the police. There was this relationship. We didn't even know they were drug dealers. I didn't know they were drug dealers till I got grown and realized what a drug dealer was. It was this bond and relationship. And I think that is key to rebuilding our communities, period. Great point.
Now, Alma, do you have time for a quick story or no?
Oh, yes, absolutely. If you do, I'm game, please.
So I'll give you one of my investigations, a little bit about one of the investigations where we saved a victim. So, and it goes back to trust too. So,
yes,
while working, I was on the SWAT team, and we were executing a warrant unrelated to human trafficking, unrelated. And during that warrant, we pulled out of the house a young female and an adult male. And I remember one of my partners, I was in the front of we call it the stick. So I was one of the first guys through the door. So I saw her come out, and I didn't pay her much mind, more looking at her hands, things like that. I come back outside, and my partner was like, hey, I was already in SVU, in the Special Victims Unit, dealing with human trafficking. He's like, she looks pretty young. Why don't you go, maybe you want to go talk to her? So I said, okay. So I went over to talk to her. It turns out she's 14 years old. The male is in his 30s. Now, coincidentally, there was no trafficking happening right there. But we ended up bringing her back to the police department, and she didn't trust law enforcement. She grew up on the street. She dropped out of school. Her mom wasn't really in her life. She was, but not a great influence. And she didn't trust law enforcement. She wouldn't talk to me, wouldn't talk to my friends. I sent a female detective into the room. And once the juvenile started talking, it was amazing, like how much she remembered. Phone numbers, names of Johns, people that she's actually has committed commercial sex acts with. She had lists of names and phone numbers, and she started opening up. And it was opening a can of worms because we ended up having so many cases from her. But we pulled her off the street. We got the Department of Children and Families involved.
Awesome.
Yeah, they went to place her into a home. She ran away, got back on the street, and this continued probably 5, 6, 7 times. I think 5 or 6, maybe even 7 with this young lady. And I eventually got to the point where I kept telling her, every time you run away, I am going to find you. You're going to see this ugly face, and I'm going to find you every single time. And I ended up gaining her trust to the point where she wouldn't talk to anybody else. She would just talk to me. So we rescued her again. This is again going on 4, 5, 6 times. And we finally were able, through the community, through our community partners, DCF, and some other local charities, we're able to put her in the Panhandle of Florida. And she actually got out of the life. She went back to school, got her education.
Amen.
She actually gave birth to a trafficker's baby. She wrote me this letter, and I get goosebumps just thinking about it. But she wrote me a letter, thanking me for getting her out of that life. Sent me a picture of her ultrasound, for her baby. It's an amazing feeling, and to this day, she's doing amazing.
Oh,
awesome.
She's a great. She doesn't. To my knowledge, she no longer communicates with her mom because her mom was a cancer in her life, and she's doing great. She has a partner, she has a baby, she has a family, and she's doing amazing. And that by itself is, it's one of my, amazing. It's one of the best rescue stories that we've had. But that's why we do this job.
That's amazing. You cared enough to fight to the vulnerability that you said. You cared enough to fight, to keep coming back. That is awesome, and that's made my heart smile. Thank you for that. Stacey, you had something to say?
So no, just to, yeah, and just to piggyback on Sarge. I mean that's beautiful, and a lot of times they do need that trust. They're seeking for that trust, and the fact that you did not give up, that just shows the hand of God was on you as well, to see that in you and to begin to trust. And that's a key factor as well, because I don't know how often they're identified in these situations. Are they immediately identified as a runaway, or is it that's amazing that you were able to, through that situation, gain so much information from this young lady, and that she's doing well today. That's a testimony in itself.
100%.
Amen. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do, because the goal, not only for the parents and the people who will view this, to have an action plan. I want us to have an action plan. Now, I must say, West Palm Beach does have an amazing. They're putting forth some amazing efforts. I know that from when I was there. I still keep in touch with people there, so I know they're kind of already with their specialized units, etc. But with us in the school system, even though we're fairly new, I do plan on presenting some of this, Stacy, to our chief, for us to be more involved in our school system
Okay.
and see how we can. Uh, I'm sure Clayton County has something. Clayton County itself, the police department, but being that we're Clayton County schools, I want us to be more engaged, because some of those kids, many of those kids in the school, we get runaways every day. Sarge, there is a what we call a 56 up here, but we get a missing person every day. And a lot of times it's just, oh, they run away every other week. Oh, they run away twice a week. And I think it's time for us to delve a little deeper and say, are they running away because they need to go meet with their pimp, you know, uh, every day after school? Because they will run away and they'll be back by 10, or they'll run away and they'll be back the very next day. So I think it's time for us to magnify a little bit more in that. And I will say this as we get ready to close, I'll let you have some final remarks. My mother, my biological mother, had me at 15. And she was someone that was vulnerable, if you will. She found out after she had me that she was adopted. It was a whole story. It's going to be, well, it's in a book, but I'll put that out later. But learning her story, I was given away and raised by amazing parents, but I knew my mom. And my mom actually was involved or trafficked by her biological family. So once she found out who her biological family was, she pursued them for love. She wanted their love. She wanted their affection, because, I wanted to be a part, like you said.
Right.
And they were dope dealers and just no good men. I'm just going to be honest. I'm not saying it because they're my uncles. They were just no good. And as a child, when I would see her, I did not know. I didn't know what was going on. But as I got older and I grew, she was on the street. But what blew me away was that they were the ones that had her on the street. And by then, you're a little, like the movie said, in too deep.
Yeah.
Right there off 13th Street in West Palm Beach. I'm not afraid to tell it. They know. She's unfortunately deceased now, but she passed away at the age of 38 years young, I should say, with complications of AIDS. So when you speak to the vulnerability and the needs and just wanting someone to care enough to fight, it's very personal for me, because she had that from a child, from the age of 15 after she had me onward, just looking for love, because it didn't come from where she felt it should have came from. And the fact that your own brothers could put you out there like that. Now, is there personal responsibility and accountability? I'm your number one accountability, responsibility chick. I believe in personal accountability all the way, but I also have grace and compassion, realizing that some people have a different fight. And she just didn't, she tried to take responsibility, I remember, a couple times, but she just would fall back into it. And like Sarge said, the drugs came in. The drugs were a big deal. And you built an addiction. And so you're running back to get that fixed. And it goes back and forth. So I want to meet with those girls at our schools and continue to put forth the efforts that we can build the community, build the engagement. And anything before I post this, I would like to post it by Monday. But if you all have any contact information that I could put in the post, any, if someone wanted to reach out, if there's a link, I have the general ones. I guess those are the ones we use. But if you have anything like the Blue campaign, I'm going to mention any resources. Stacy, put your foundation in there. Anything that we need, I definitely want to put it out. Super Bowl weekend is coming up. And I'm a football fan, but we know large events, especially the Super Bowl, draws a lot of this activity. And before it comes, I want this information out because it could be our child, our parent, our mother, whatever, and we're here to serve. So, any final marks before we close?
I would say there's a lot of resources out there, and I'll send you some, Alma. Like I said, the Blue Campaign, the Polaris Project, the National Human Trafficking Hotline. For parents, I would say, be involved in your kid's life. Be nosy. Get in their business. Figure out what they're doing. The vulnerabilities start at home.
That's right.
And for kids,
that's right.
The kids, they have to put the phone down and be wary of who they're speaking to. But what you're doing is amazing.
Yes,
that's great. This is a great idea, and I appreciate you having us both on.
Yeah,
I thank you, Stacy.
And I will say,
well, I'm grateful to you both. Yes. Awesome. Well, I'm grateful to you both. I will send you the link once I post this. Your words are invaluable. Your experience is appreciated, and your presence is just overwhelmingly appreciated. So if there's anything that I can do for any of you, please let me know. Give love to the family, and thank you for being a part of Touche Life, where we gain strength through truth, testimony, and ultimately transformation. I love you dearly.
Thank you.
Stacy, it's very nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you as well. We must do this again.
I agree. Part 2.